Guys, I'd like to introduce my next guest. It's George Avery. Really doesn't need an introduction. He's world famous. I'm expecting to see his face on a dollar bill somewhere sometime in the near future. So George, we were just talking about your background, 36 years with State Farm. Maybe give us a 30,000-foot view for those who may not have heard of you before.
Came out of the body shop, started as a painter's helper, made my way through the body shop, then got hired at State Farm, became an estimator, and then I was a trainer, and then a claim representative for both property and injury, made my way to corporate as an instructor, and then I was in charge of all the training on the estimatic side, and became what they call an estimating consultant. A consultant at State Farm's internal. So I was assigned several states and worked with local management. And then I was the spokesperson to the industry. So State Farm came up with things they needed to communicate. I was the guy, and some of it was met positively, and sometimes we had to talk about it a little bit more before everybody understood. But I always joke that I've got the therapy bills to prove it. So I retired 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago. So still involved with the industry. Yep. CIC, very involved. I was a past CIC chair. And of course, the support that I got from the CIC past chairs made a commitment in my mind. So for the last 4 years, I have been very active in CIC and then also the National Auto Body Council. So
yeah, well, thank you. You know what? Thank you for a lot of advice over the years. I remember you back in the State Farm days, and when I had my shops, and you were full of good insights even then. So that's why I thought, what a great guy. Here we are in unprecedented time. Have you ever seen anything like this pandemic, this coronavirus in your 36 years? Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, not from a pandemic standpoint, but it seems like whatever we get faced with, that's the absolute worst thing. And it'd be funny, 20 years ago, if somebody's, we got hit with something, whether it was we couldn't get parts or whatever it may be, we could say, well, that's nothing. Wait until 2020. You really see something. And they'd probably think you needed psychological counseling. But the point is no, I haven't. And it's one of those things where it's a portion of, I think, overreacting in some respects and then underreacting in some respects. So
sure,
kind of across the board. But I always joked about, what would it take for the industry to pull together? I always thought it was going to be an alien, but I guess it's
some
an
kind of
virus. Yeah. Well, it could be. So anyway, it is something that and again, insurance companies, they've always dealt with, issues. I mean, Hurricane Andrew, Katrina, those kind of things were pretty devastating.
Yeah, like when we look at, in a catastrophe event, a lot of times everybody pulls together, comes to the epicenter. We can't come to the epicenter on this because obviously there's a virus there that's going to infect the people who come together. So what can insurance companies, what can body shops do in the early stages? Like we're barely the first week into this thing. What is some early stage advice that you might have for shops, for we've been talking with OEMs and also other insurance companies. You have a well-rounded perspective. What are your early stage thoughts?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for all the insurers, but I can certainly speak from the insurance perspective. In the past, a long time ago, we had storms and catastrophes and all these things happen. And it was always regional. The regional people kind of took care of it. And if you weren't in a hail-prone zone, you would just say, boy, I wonder what that was like, and you never really thought twice about it. But as time went on, I think insurance companies, especially the larger ones, instead of outsourcing some of the help they needed, they started creating catastrophe units and actually dedicating employees and doing a couple things. And as a result, that started to pull together some direction from a national perspective versus a regional. So that has come about, and I think in the future we'll continue to do that. But to answer your question, like what can you do? The first thing that happens in a catastrophe, at least in my experience, is, and a catastrophe, obviously compared to what we're going through now, what I'm going to say is nothing. But, if all of the estimators, I mean, I had a situation when I was in Los Angeles, I had 8 estimators. We wrote 150 estimates a day there. And we had the flu come through there, and I lost over half of them. And they just couldn't come in, and you didn't want them to come in, and certainly nothing compared to what we have today. But the fact is, to answer your question, is that you rely on your partners. That's when you call your partners up and say, hey, look, here's where I'm at. what can we do to help? And I remember that simple little process was, I can't get a guy out there to write an estimate. Can you write estimate for me? And of course, that's before the days of the program shops. But I guess my focus is that each one of the business partners just needs to call up and go, okay, what can I do? What can you do? What can we do together here? And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll do this if you can do that. Part of me thinks that there should be a lot of that anyway in
Right.
getting along and serving our customer. But the advice, I think, and I can say it's free advice because I know what it's worth. It's just a matter of calling your business partner and go, look, here's where I'm at. All my people are not in. They're working from home. I'm reluctant to get them out there. What can we do? Well, I'll tell you what, I don't want them in here. So I'll tell you what, let me do this for you.
Sure.
And I think that's the best bet. One other thing about the insurers, they kind of browbeat the insurers a little bit about profit, but, you never really hear about insurance companies running out of money. And I think that that money they set aside is for times like this. And I think it's important that we just work together and realize that all we need to do is service that customer. Everybody's pretty disrupted.
It is. And, talking with some economists and talking with some epidemiologists and a few other folks that we've been trying to get a better perspective of this whole thing. And really this whole forum is to try and give, a myriad of different information from different sources so people can try and make an informed decision, because we really haven't been through something like this. So the thought is, the economists are thinking, what's going to happen as vehicle traffic decreases because people are quarantined in their homes? Well, we expect accident traffic to decrease, which means fewer claims. What are your thoughts around that piece of it? Is that accurate in your purview and what you can see from your experience?
Well, it's a little more immediate. I mean, we've talked about, maybe the smaller claims disappearing because of accident avoidance technology and all those things. This not leaving the house is a pretty strong accident avoidance technology.
Great. Yeah.
I think the repair industry, is pretty agile. I've just always been amazed about how the repair industry, the collision industry, adjusts to things like this. So my sense is yeah, there might be some ones coming or less coming in the door, but at the same time, we expect to see decreases. I mean, the airbag was supposed to stop injuries, and so yeah, there'll be a decrease. But I think as time goes on, they will start. The repair industry might start going, all right, well, I'm not having the collision come in the door, but I can do this, and there's other things that they can do. Because I'll tell you, a collision repairer has a pretty wide swath. I mean, we're not just talking body shop. We're talking, body. We're talking, mechanical, all the electronics. There's a lot of components that they're very knowledgeable in. I just think that they'll adjust. I don't know, other than fewer will come in the door, I'm sure.
Let's talk insurance for a second. A lot of insurance companies are trying to migrate towards, and this is at least what we've heard from other folks in the field. They're trying to obviously practice social distancing, like the CDC had talked about. They're trying to have people working from home. How much of that is going to be an upset to normal claims handling for the people working at the insurance company if they're trying to practice those things? How much of a disruption can we expect for claims handling, for adjusters being on top of the files, things like that?
Well, if it had happened 25 years ago, it would have been devastating. I mean, only a small amount had laptops. Everybody has a laptop now. So really, from an insurance perspective, even regardless of size, right? Because even a smaller insurer has people that work from home. And then if you're a larger insurer and you have people centralized, they certainly have the connectivity. The bandwidth is there. My sense is if there was a time to send your employees home, you're probably better off now than we have ever been. Customers want to interact online. I mean, that's how the photo estimating started and the self-service has started. There is a desire,
right? And
I think the claims folks can operate pretty effectively from wherever they are. I mean, again, some have been working from home a long time.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't see that as much of as a disruptor. The only thing that I see that you have to be careful of is not taking care of yourself first. It's like anybody that's been on an airplane, right? You always get that. In the unlikely event that we lose cabin air pressure, a mask will drop. And what do they say? All right, off there, put your mask on first, then help those around you. And one of the things that I think is a mistake is we don't pay attention. Take care of yourself first. Make sure your employees, because I can't help anybody if I'm sick.
Right.
So make sure that maybe, that we practice. And I think a lot of insurance companies have taken those steps. And so to answer your question, I don't see, as soon as I say this, someone's going to go, oh yeah, well, what about this? But I would say that I don't see that much of disruption with this move towards centralizing. This ability for employees to work away from home is not a new thing.
Gotcha. So one of the subjects that we had, obviously there's some dealerships shutting down. Toyota says it's guns a-blazing. We're not stopping, shipping parts. And, do you foresee any, procurement of parts hoarding? What kind of behaviors would you expect from a situation like what we're in right now, from your point of view?
Well, the only thing I can reach back and touch was it Daewoo? I think it was Daewoo that orphaned that car. And we ended up with, there was a lot of, I worked for State Farm at the time. There was a lot of customers. We had thousands of customers in that car. And, if you had a custom car or a classic car and a fender wasn't available on a Packard or an old car, it's, hey, whenever you find one, let us know. We'll take care of it. Well, it didn't work that way. I need a car and I need it now. I'm going to work. I need the transportation. And, the State Farm took steps, all the carriers did, to start determining, what are we going to do? If we total these cars, are we going to put them in a central location and utilize those parts, cannibalize those cars for recycled parts? So in the event that there's a part shortage, and that's one of the reasons that there was a lot of interest in having a lot of transparency in the parts arena, was to be able to tap into, hey, I'm in Southern California, happen to be in Oklahoma right now. It's just wishful thinking. But if I was in Southern California and suddenly I can't find parts at my local, is there functionality where I can look countrywide? So everybody does that. I mean, look at what we did right now. You can't find toilet paper, at least in Oklahoma, to save your life. Why toilet paper is such a key component to the coronavirus, I'm not sure. But the point is you will have some people hoarding some parts, and unfortunately, maybe those parts prices will go up. But from an insurance perspective, hey, there's a risk out there. I want to help my consumer. What's it going to take to do that? And then triage those cars as to what needs to be fixed immediately and what can wait.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, no, I think it's good. I think, what we're looking at is what is the interruption factor. If claims volume drops, I think then we'll see even less of an interruption factor, even though they're putting people into houses to work or are off-site or staggering shifts or whatever they're going to do at the claim side. So, that was good to get that perspective. What about things like rental cars? If parts aren't available, how would an insurance company handle a situation where we need to keep a customer in a rental longer because the parts aren't available? Could there be allowances for that? What does that look like from your perspective?
So the answer to that is really you have to go back to the contract, right? So the insurance contract has limitations, but remember, insurance companies make business decisions, right? The contract that I have with the insurer I have says that they can use recycled parts, period. Well, that includes airbags, but they've made a business decision not to source recycled airbags. So same thing. I would say that there's a good, I would say that, if your rental has a limit, perhaps there's a business decision case by case, which I really like about the insurance industry for the most part, is it is case by case. But there's a perfect example of what I just said. You got to call your business partner, Hi Hertz or Alamo or Enterprise, whoever it may be, and just say, hey, I got an issue here. I'm out of money from a contractual standpoint. what can we do to help this particular consumer? And I was at 9/11. The plane went right over me in Pennsylvania,
Wow.
and I was in a Hertz rental car. And Hertz just said, "Don't worry about it. Just bring it back when you get home." That's nice. Well, that happened in this case. My guess is case by case. You can come up with a million scenarios that go, you know what, you don't need a car, or we can't help you. And I can come up with a million that says, you know what, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to extend the coverage. And again, it's a business decision and the flexibility that an insurer has, and it's up to them.
Yeah, no, I think that's some pretty sound advice there. One of the things we were talking about is our shop's going to have to do more repair versus replace. What advice do you have for shops in that role, and advising their insurance partners, keeping everybody in the loop? What would that look like?
I would, the repair industry, you hear some that go, hey, they just replace parts, this repair versus replace, it doesn't happen anymore. I don't think that's true. I think the high performers, are in the high 50 or whatever number you want to say, and a high percentage of repair versus replace, because it is efficient and it does have some value. And I see the industry, those technicians that have those skill sets. You're seeing a lot of repairs that are segmenting the work. You have people that disassemble, people that paint. It isn't just like a bodyman and painter like we used to have. And I think that they will adapt to that. They will look. The repair. And here, when I was an insurer, I really, it's my customer. I cared about my customer. They voted for me at least at State Farm every 6 months when they paid their premium. And I thought they were my customer. But at the same time, you need to recognize that a repairer is the one that they hand the keys to the repairer. They see him right in the eye. And I can tell you that I have a lot of confidence in the repair industry going, you know what, I'll tell you what we'll do. I know we initially said to replace this fender. I'm not going to do something. In other words, I'm not shortcutting anything, but I think we've got the ability and we've got the time frame and the alternatives, or the alternatives have changed. Alternatives, not the word, but the inputs changed where, you know what, I'm going to repair it. And you go over to a technician that goes, hey, what do you think? You think we can get this thing out of here? Yeah, let me give it a try. So I think this approach of having more repair versus replace is where the industry is trying to go anyway to be more efficient, in my opinion. And second of all, I think they'll make the adjustment, and they'll run across ones that go, you know what, my neighbor had theirs repaired. Well, yours can't. It's just beyond repair. But I'll tell you what I can do, and maybe recycled is a way to go. Of course, recycled welded on parts is kind of out, but because that a lot of times when you remove that part, it destroys the appropriate attachment functionality. But I think and I'm not implying shortcuts, but I think the industry will make adjustments.
Yeah, and we might have to, in order to keep things moving through the shop, especially if there's an interruption in parts. So that's interesting. One of the things that shops have already voiced, and I'm not sure if this is in your purview, but business interruption. What does that look like from an insurance standpoint? Would businesses have, and again, this is maybe outside of your normal realm, but I thought I'd table it. What is your experience with business interruption insurance, and will shops be able to get some assistance there?
Yeah, that depends. Obviously that came up with Andrew, the hurricane, and there's a definition of disruption when you're underwater, it's a very sad time. I know the National Auto Body Council had a program that reached out and bought new tools along with CREF and I think it's CREF. The point is that they'll reach out and help. But that, there was a big thing. You need, different insurance. That's beyond what I did. I was on the claim side, and businessmen and women have to make decisions when it comes to business interruption. It's interesting that, my dad was probably not the, let me see, my brother's calling me, so I'm going to assume that mom is okay. What was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought. But anyway, business disruption is something that a body shop has to face. Well, I had something really good to there. And if I think of it, I'm going to tell you it later. That's what I'm going to do.
That's good. Yeah. So that's, we were talking about people being underwater, business interruption, and what these men and women can do. So I think that's going to be a chief among them, where they're like, hey, you know what? California shut down, dealers are shut down, we're shut down. And we look to see a lot of people are thinking about the financial impact. Not only is cars going to be less driven, but customers are thinking to themselves, now, wait a minute, my job might be in jeopardy. I don't know if I want to, I might only have a 200 or 500 or something deductible, but that's groceries in the fridge. And so is there some advice to shops, to insurers, to folks? We talked about maybe, what is the insurance company's position on if we can help customers finance their deductible, or do something to make it less painful up front for the customer, but yet keep work flowing through the shop. So the insurance have a body shop, a partner that's there long-term. What is some advice around that financial piece of it?
Well, none of that's really new, right? Because as deductibles climbed, years ago, really high, and today, when you look at a car, the damage, like in the 80s, if you had $2,000 worth of damage to a 1980 or 90s car, if it was in your driveway, it looked pretty bad. You're talking about cars today where there's a lot of internal things, and the cars don't look bad. And my guess is some of those insurance claim dollars have made their way to Sam's Club for a widescreen TV. And it's something that happened a lot. And I think that the repair industry has always addressed that. I think they're the first ones. That's the thing. It's the most important thing about a repairer is they're the first ones. When I walk in there, I go, hey, I got a really high deductible. And that's when I think a repair is at their best. I'll tell you what we can do. There's a thing called temporary repairs. Let me see if I can get this thing buttoned up so where you can drive it to work. And then once you get your deductible, we'll do something. Once this thing's over, we'll do something. This is what I can do for you. And I know shops may finance. From an insurer's perspective, I didn't see much of that. It was all bound by the contract and the responsibility to fulfill the obligation under the contract, pay the bill, and they have to pay their deductible. So I think it's the repairers that have stepped up and helped a lot of people. When I was a claim rep, I remember just having a claim where it was a little disruptive, and the lady, had a car that was really a total, but she didn't want to total it. And that's when my boss said, look, you have an elderly person on a fixed income, fix her car.
Right.
It's like, oh, I get it. So it's case by case. So the shop is the first one to see that customer, and I think they make a good decision.
Yeah, fulfill that need. Well, George, I feel like that has been some incredibly helpful information. I'm sure. As always, you always deliver, and I always appreciate that about you. What other questions that I'm not even asking? Things that you see as important for all the people in the ecosystem to know. What are a couple of thoughts that we can kind of wrap up with and share with the folks that are watching us?
Well, I think number one, we need to rely on insurers that have a pretty broad view and have a lot of data and have planned for risk and have set money aside, and they're good to partner with. And we can't forget how important the repairer is. From what I just mentioned, they're the first ones that see the customer. They know whether that needs to be fixed right away or not. They will help the people. The only other free advice I'll give you that just puzzles me in this particular situation is that we're not even fist bumping anymore. We don't want to touch anything. I don't want any part. I don't want to see your paper towel, nothing. Oh, $20? Oh, I'll take that.
Right.
$20. I put that in my pocket.
Done it first.
That $20, no problem. Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of things where, again, contacting your business partner and go, look, I'm going to send my person out to look at this car. They're not coming in your shop. Okay. No offense. We just don't want the connection. There's nothing wrong with my shop. I know. We're just going to do it that way, just as much as the repairer might have some guidelines. And I think I'll just end with the fact that if business partners are working together, we each need to respect our own decisions. Well, that was a dumb decision. Well, that's the decision we made, and we need to respect it regardless of who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. George, thank you so much for taking the time. And as always,
thanks.
for your brilliant insights. We always
How about that? Well, thanks for your time. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.